MAVAKAGA.
We all know elections, right? They're about democracy and everyone getting their say, and hopefully having some decent conversations about the issues.
Right, civil discourse. It's what we hope for.
Yeah, civil discourse. But sometimes, well, things can get a little messy.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, case in point.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that incident a while back on Election Day?
Oh, you mean the one where a local guy got arrested at a polling place? Yeah, that one made the headlines.
Yep, that's the one. So we thought it'd be interesting to, dig a little deeper, look past the headlines and try to figure out what was really going on.
Yeah, beyond the surface.
Exactly. I mean, what would even drive someone to get arrested on Election Day? Of all days.
Well, elections can be pretty tense.
Yeah. And this incident, I think, says something about, civic engagement, what it looks like today, and maybe how that intersects with access to information.
Freedom of information, even.
Right. Freedom of information. So we're calling this one Election Day Arrest. Should be an interesting deep dive.
So let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with the facts, just the basics. The guy who was arrested, his name is David Godbout. He's a local resident.
Okay.
And he was arrested at a polling place on, like you said, Election Day.
Makes sense.
And the charges: disorderly conduct and violating conditions of release.
Oh, violating conditions of release. Okay, so that suggests there's more to this story.
Right.
It means he was probably already facing charges for something else, right?
I think so, yeah.
And he was out on bail, most likely, which comes with certain rules, things you can and can't do.
So this wasn't his first run-in with the law, it sounds like.
Probably not. But here's the thing, the really interesting part, at least to me, he wasn't actually at the polling place to vote.
What?
No. He was there to protest being asked for ID when he tried to vote earlier.
Hold on. So he was asked for ID, and then he went back to protest.
Yeah.
It's his commitment.
Yeah, you could say that.
I guess so.
But, it brings up this whole voter ID debate, which is a, pretty contentious issue.
Yeah, for sure.
You have people who believe requiring ID is absolutely essential to prevent voter fraud.
Right. Got to make sure only eligible voters are casting ballots. Makes sense.
Right. But then you have others who argue that these laws make it harder for certain groups to vote.
Like who?
Well, people who might have more difficulty getting the required documentation, the elderly, minorities, folks experiencing homelessness. They argue that it's a form of voter suppression.
Oh, okay. So there are definitely two sides to this.
Oh, absolutely. It's very politically charged.
So back to Godbout. He was asked for ID. He got upset. What exactly happened?
Well, according to reports, he refused to sign an affidavit confirming his identity, just a simple document.
Yeah.
And then he became confrontational, to put it mildly.
With the registrars?
Yes, with the registrars, the people responsible for running the election. Witnesses described him as agitated, even intimidating.
Oh.
He was asked to leave multiple times, both by the registrars and by the police, but he refused.
So he was basically disrupting the entire voting process.
Yeah, pretty much. And keep in mind, these registrars, they have a tough job. They're there to make sure everything runs smoothly, that everyone who is eligible can vote, and that it's all fair and accurate.
Right. So someone like Godbout causing a scene, that just makes their job so much harder.
Exactly. And it can also be intimidating for other voters. Nobody wants to feel threatened when they're trying to exercise their right to vote.
Absolutely not. So this guy, Godbout, he was eventually arrested. But the thing is, this wasn't even his first time causing trouble in an election.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently he's been a bit of a disruptive presence at previous elections.
Wow. So he has a bit of a history.
He does. But this was his first actual arrest on Election Day.
Interesting.
Oh, and one more thing. After the arrest, one of the registrars, they actually called the Secretary of State's office.
Really? Why?
They were anticipating a complaint from Godbout, about being denied the right to vote. They want to be prepared.
That's smart. It shows how seriously these things are taken.
Yeah. And, it reminded me that there's a whole process in place for this sort of thing.
Right. If you believe there was an issue with the election, you can file a complaint. There are investigations, recounts if necessary.
So there's a system, a legal framework.
Exactly.
But hold on, the story doesn't end there. Godbout, after the whole arrest thing, well, according to the police chief, he was seen yelling at a student, being aggressive towards some candidates, and even insulting police officers.
Wow.
I know, right? But the weird thing is, nobody pressed charges for any of that.
That is interesting.
It is.
It happens sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, even when someone does something wrong, the victims are witnesses. They might choose not to press charges. It can be for all sorts of reasons.
Like what?
Fear of retaliation, not wanting to deal with the hassle of a court case.
Oh, I see.
Or sometimes they just want to de-escalate the situation, avoid making things worse.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, it's complicated.
Okay, so Godbout's got this history of causing a scene at elections. But there's one more layer to this story, and it's, well, kind of fascinating, honestly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
This guy, he has a habit of filing Freedom of Information Act requests, or, FOIA requests.
Oh, wow.
And not just a few. He files them constantly.
Like a lot.
Like a lot. To the point where he was actually named Connecticut's first vexatious requester.
Vexatious requester.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It is. I've never heard of that.
It was a big deal when it happened. Basically, the Freedom of Information Commission decided he was abusing the system.
Wow. So hold on. Back up a second. For our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is a FOIA request?
Yeah, good point. It's basically a way for anyone to request access to government documents.
Right. It's all about transparency and accountability. Imagine you think your local government is doing something shady. A FOIA request is how you can get the documents to prove it.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool for journalists, activists, really anyone who wants to hold the government accountable.
Right. But, like any tool, it can be misused.
And that's where the vexatious requester thing comes in.
Okay, so vexatious basically means annoying or harassing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So a vexatious requester is someone who's using FOIA requests not to uncover wrongdoing, but to, harass government agencies or just overwhelm them with requests.
Ah, so they're bogging down the system, not really looking for information, but just causing trouble.
Exactly. And that seems to be what Godbout was doing.
Wow. Okay. So we've got this guy who's disrupting elections, has a history of confrontations, and now we're learning he's bombarding government agencies with FOIA requests.
Yep, that's our guy.
It's a lot.
It is. Oh, and actually, there's even more to his story. He's had run-ins with the law before.
I'm kidding. Like what?
Well, he was charged with criminal impersonation.
Criminal impersonation. What did he do?
Apparently, he used some kind of technology to fake caller ID information.
Yeah.
And he was using it to contact town officials.
So he was pretending to be someone else.
Yeah, not for good reasons, I'm guessing.
Wow.
Oh, and there was another disorderly conduct charge, too.
Another one.
Yeah, stemming from a confrontation at town hall.
This guy doesn't stay out of trouble, does he?
Nope, not really.
What strikes me about all of this is that it feels very of the moment,
What do you mean?
Well, we live in this digital age where everyone has access to information and technology, and that's amazing in a lot of ways. But it also creates new opportunities for things to go wrong.
Right. It's easier than ever to manipulate information, spread misinformation, or even harass people, with those fake caller ID calls.
Exactly.
And even something like FOIA, which is supposed to be about transparency and accountability, it can be turned into a weapon.
That's what's so fascinating about this case.
So where does that leave us?
Yeah.
What have we learned?
Well, I think it's clear that, individual rights, like the right to free speech and the need to maintain order during elections, those things can sometimes clash.
For sure.
And we've seen how complex the voter ID debate is. There are valid arguments on both sides.
Definitely. It's not a simple issue.
Right. And then there's this whole question of how technology is changing the way we interact with our government.
It's supposed to be easier to connect with our elected officials, to hold them accountable. Right.
Right.
But what happens when that communication becomes adversarial? When technology is used to manipulate or harass?
Big questions.
They are. And I don't think they're easy answers.
I agree.
But I think it's a conversation worth having.
Absolutely. And it's something we all need to be thinking about.
Definitely.
Thank you for watching. And if you are interested in these types of videos, do consider subscribing to the channel.
MAVAKAGA.